I'm Ernie Humphrey, Educational Programs Leader for Proformative, the largest online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, The Right Recipe for Creating Value from Finance, Big Data plus Mobile Technology and the Connected CFO. Successful CFOs are increasingly leveraging big data and mobile-based enterprise solutions to deliver strategic value across the enterprise. Today, we'll review the results of Deloitte's most recent CFO Signals quarterly survey and discuss the key issues for CFOs, investment priorities, and the transformations that organizations are making to succeed in an uncertain future. Our featured speakers will also discuss how groundbreaking technologies for big data and mobility are changing the landscape of finance and what the CFO action plan should be to leverage these innovations to their advantage. I'd like to thank SAP, whose limited thought leadership helps us make this webinar possible and delivered at no cost. A quick note on today's agenda. First, we'll hear presentations from each of our featured speakers. Then we'll move to the interactive Q&A session where we'll spend the remainder of our hour. We would like this to be an interactive experience for you. So if you have any questions at any time, please go to the questions area in your GoToWebinar control panel and send us your questions. We can't promise to get all of them in, but we will do our very best, and we'll follow up afterwards on any questions we did not get to. A few more logistical notes about the webinar today. A link to today's presentation and video recording of the webinar will be sent out to all attendees within 24 hours of the event. Please note the presentation is already posted at www.proformative.com/resources for free download. Those who would like CPE credits today will need to answer all polling questions during the event and should have pre-registered for CPE credit. For any questions on CPE credits, please send an email to cpe@proformative.com. Again, we encourage you to ask questions on today's topic via the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel at any time during the webinar. Finally, you'll be asked to take a short survey today regarding the webinar, and we greatly appreciate your feedback regarding our event today, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable time. A quick word about Proformative. Proformative is the largest online community and resource for senior-level corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related leaders. Proformative connects corporate finance leaders to provide instant advice and insights on the tough financial and strategic challenges they face every day. Okay, let's get started by introducing today's first speaker, John Steele. John is a principal in Deloitte's Consulting Technology Service Area and a leader in the SAP Finance Transformation practice. He has nearly 20 years of experience in consulting in corporate environments with a focus for the last 12 years on SAP-enabled business transformation initiatives. John has significant experience in the leadership of complex transformation programs, including process redesign, shared services, and external reporting. He has played significant roles on multiple global SAP programs and has led teams across all SAP functional areas. He has served clients in a variety of industries, including consumer products, wholesale distribution, manufacturing, aerospace, defense, and media. With that, it is my distinct pleasure to hand the floor over to our first speaker, John Steele. John, please go ahead and take it away for us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ernie, and hello, everyone. This is John Steele. So today, Corinne and I are going to talk about some of the challenges that are facing CFOs and their organizations when it comes to both big data and mobility, and then how CFOs are going to approach the use of that data to engineer transformation for both growth and innovation. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the specific technologies, but in general, we'll talk more about the trends. So just a couple of quick things about our CFO Signals survey. Our CFO Signals is a pulse survey that we do quarterly, and it really is just getting information from CFOs, and it's semi-scientific, but it's meant to represent trends. So in the last quarter, we had CFOs only respond across U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Covers all industries except for government. And in the last quarter, we had 105 CFOs respond. More than 80% of those CFOs are from companies with $1 billion in revenue or more. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the business environment itself. Something that we noticed last quarter was that there was an air of optimism that is just starting to come out in terms of how the CFOs are viewing the marketplace. So this slide, I want to talk just briefly about some of the impediments to growth and some of the aids of growth that CFOs see across the economy. Some of the major impediments, there's definitely still a concern around government spending, budget policy, and regulation. If you look at the lower left-hand quadrant of the spider chart there, you can see that the red lines indicate the concerns that CFOs have. And it's been a pervasive concern over the last 4 years in terms of overall regulation, and that's still a major topic on the minds of CFOs. However, on the green lines, positive factors, 60% of the CFOs are seeing the state of the North American economy as a aid to growth. So what that means is it's time for finance to come out of hibernation and help the business grow. Industry-specific demand was another big factor that we saw in the last quarter. 40% of the CFOs mentioned it as a top driver for growth. And that actually, if you look at our global CFO signal survey, that was also represented in the overall global survey. So now just going to the next slide, talking a little bit about company priorities. And I think this plays in well with the topic of the webinar today. In terms of the focus on growth, it's evident in what we see. Now this slide, I want to talk a little bit about what that means particularly. There's definitely a bias towards executing over planning. For several years, we saw CFOs responding that strategy was more and more important. Over the last year to year and a half, we've seen execution become much more important. There's also been a bias towards current geographies over new geographies. And if you look at the left-hand side, you can see that the blue in the middle under revenue growth, where it says grow in current geographies, there's a very heavy bias towards that. There's also a bias towards organic growth as opposed to growing through acquisition. And then there's also a bias towards growing via new offerings in those existing marketplace. So what does that mean overall? What that means when you step back and think about it from a CFO's perspective is that the CFOs are looking for organic growth, new offerings in the existing marketplace. And that's where you get value from data and analytics as well as mobility, because it helps to bring better information from your existing customer base. So what the topic today should play into very well what the priorities are from a CFO perspective, from a company-wide view. Now, focusing a little bit more, diving down into the priorities of the finance organization itself, we saw over the last 5 to 6 quarters that there's a focus on measurement. What does that really mean? What it means in terms of the core finance priorities is that basically half of our CFOs put manage FP&A in their top 3 core finance priorities. And that means budgets, decision support. And that will play in very well with some of the discussion that we want to have today. The whole topic of making the right decision to be able to drive that organic growth is absolutely crucial. Now, another one that's in there, it's actually the last one on the bottom, is in terms of managing information IT. Over 30% of our CFOs put it in their top 3. So it's clear that there's an expectation for finance to help drive innovation in terms of information technology across the business. And tying in with that top priority, we'll have further discussions today around mobility and big data. Now, in terms of business support priorities, where our CFOs exercise their catalyst and strategist roles, nearly 85% of our CFOs put supporting corporate business unit strategy in their top 3. And if you tie it back into the overall company priorities that we talked about on the prior slide, what that means is supporting the growth that businesses are looking for. Now, supporting sales is a distant second at 46%, but it also is integrated with the overall support of that strategy. What we also saw that I think is interesting is that supporting M&A and production and stakeholders are still in the top 5, but have declined in priorities over previous quarters. So when you take the 3 together, the state of the business environment, the state of company priorities, and then the organizational priorities for the finance organization, all 3 of them point towards getting focused around growth. So what is that macro trend impact on that OCFO focus? Although finance organizations differ in their particular pain points and appetite for change, there's definitely a bias to action and an increasing reliance on technology to accomplish finance organization goals. And as I said, the current focus for the finance organization is to get back to their core business, providing meaningful analysis through FP&A and driving business results, and harnessing big data and also mobility is essential to achieving those results. So many of you have seen this is our 4 phases construct that we've used pretty consistently at Deloitte over the last 8 to 10 years. And the 4 phases of the CFO, catalyst, strategist, operator, and steward, are balancing out the different roles that a CFO has. Now, operator and steward are basically related to keeping the lights on. Catalyst is the one where the CFO's organization is stimulating behaviors across the organization to achieve those strategic and financial objectives, and growth is clearly one of those. So the goal of most of the CFOs that I've talked to in the last 12 to 18 months is really to move towards that catalyst role. Most finance organizations have the dial tone working well, the steward and operator roles, but there are additional tool sets and additional capabilities to help the CFOs focus on being a catalyst. So what are some of those? There are 3 macro trends in finance technology right now that, as I see it. There's a positive disruption that has been put in place in finance technology due to some major developments in the last 3 to 5 years that didn't exist before. These developments allow finance to put more information in more places. That's mobility. Disaggregate data and gain insight using that big data. That's analytics, including SAP's HANA. And then transform business processes. Those are your business suite, the core ERP products, and we've seen a big evolution in those. Now, Karuna and I today will talk about mobility and analytics. So again, mobility, it drives those business transactions or information closer to the end user. So you can create a very dynamic push-pull with those end users. You can get closer to your customers. It provides additional productivity by capturing the moment. It allows you to get that out there at the right time. So analytics, including things like HANA, its capabilities to move through vast amounts of information. It allows you to tailor the information specifically, and it allows you to capture hidden value from information that may have been unavailable to you before because you just simply couldn't process it. Just going to a little bit more detail on these 2 topics. That move to Catalyst requires finance to push beyond the 4 walls and insert itself squarely into the business. CFO sentiment has remained consistent for 3 years that existing customers and new offerings are critical for profit growth. I'm repeating that several times because it's something that has been just a major trend that we're seeing. Big data can provide answers while mobility will drive further insight. So again, in terms of analytics and big data, they require careful planning, though, to drive real value from the sea of available information. A lot of CFOs that I talk to are concerned with information overload. I've spoken to 2 particular CFOs of large companies in the last couple of months who've said to me that there's so much information I don't know where to start, and how can I get started? The way to get started and the right focus around driving value from analytics and big data is look at customer, supplier, business process, and employees. What are those interactions with customers that you can mine for information to learn where a new service offering or where a new product might be valuable? Which are the customers that are bringing profitability at a micro level that you could focus on driving additional profitability? What are the customers that you have that are taking more time and you could actually be an unprofitable relationship with that customer? On the supplier side, we've seen excellent usage of big data to look at things like category management and spend analysis. Are you getting the best deals from your supplier? Are there areas where existing suppliers can help drive new service offerings? From a business process perspective, while the whole focus of CFO organizations is not just cost cutting, some analytics related to business process will help you to understand, are you making the most of the business process? So by using analytics to look at, for example, the sales process of your salespeople, you might be able to understand, are they getting enough time with the customer to be able to drive those additional new product offerings through the value chain? And finally, employees. Inside of Deloitte, we've actually used big data to analyze our employee engagement. And that's something that, while it has an indirect effect on some of the marketplace activities that you're performing in your company, by looking at it, you can find some spots where you can focus and get some improvement. Now, on the mobility side, and I think Karuna's got some really good information on that today, mobility requires making the process more effective and not just the wow factor. And when we talk about the wow factor, a lot of times people will look at mobility and say, well, okay, I'm going to put this beautiful mobile front end on, and by just building it, they will come. But people often forget to look at the back end of the business process and understand the whole front to back. So I've seen that the benefits are real with clients that we're serving, particularly in areas like forecasting and planning. When you put the forecast closer to the people that are accountable for driving the business, you can really enhance that forecast accuracy. And Karuna's got some good discussion on that today. From a customer management perspective, I've got a slide and a couple of slides to just quickly talk about how you can manage cash flow more effectively and really dive into working capital with things like credit, dispute, and collection tools. And then, of course, don't forget about applying analytics to mobility. Mobility allows you to take the disaggregated data, the volumes of data that you've crunched, and put them into mobile dashboards that are specific for the role that the person plays in the company. And by refining that analytics down, you start addressing that problem that I talked about that the CFOs have of too much information, because you filter that information down into what's relevant for that role and how they can go execute their job better at that particular time. So some of the things that we've seen, and I'll just go through these next two slides relatively quickly, is inside of Deloitte, we've been able to serve clients across different technology platforms and in different industries with big data to do things like component lead time management. To be more effective, this was something we have brought to bear in the aerospace and defense industry extremely well in terms of managing the overall component availability. The information that was provided to us by big data allowed us to dig into areas that we couldn't actually process for our clients before. Things like financial analytics, where you can give a much better dashboard view. It's a little hard to see that screen, I'm sure, on a webinar, but you can see that it's much more visual. And by making it visual, it allows the reader to pick it up right away and understand where areas need to be adjusted. Media and entertainment, we've been extremely successful for our media and entertainment clients building dashboards even down to a specific title to understand how the title is working across sentiment and social media, financially, sales by region, and again present that visually in a way that makes it easy for the person to understand. And then in areas like fraud and risk detection and in government, that same visualization really helps drive home the point and lets the role that dashboard or visualization is aimed at dive specifically into what they need to do to address the business concerns. Again, when you're talking about being able to focus, these kind of visualizations and analytics help you get focused. So here's just another quick example that we put together. One of the things that we recognized in our retail and our wholesale distribution practice is that by getting mobility engaged and getting tools into the hands of the right people out in the field, making it easier to use, we could actually tighten up the collection process. So this is something that we built for our Finance Transformation Accelerator. It's an internal Deloitte solution that we have that we use as an accelerator for specific clients. But what this shows is you can go into a specific account and manage your disputes through basically 3 screen swipes, a couple selections, and a click. This information in the old days when you would have it in an ERP system would be much more difficult to enter, not as intuitive, and so the process itself would take longer and sometimes be completely ignored. By making it easier for people to use, by making it more intuitive, you're going to make the business process much more effective. So in general, these are the kind of things that we have been applying to address some of the concerns of our CFOs. Now, I have to run through these information pretty quickly in a webinar like this, but I would encourage everyone who's on to go and look at our full Q2 report and past reports. We've got a lot of great analytics in there, specifically by industry, and you can see what people in your specific industry and CFOs in your industry are thinking. So that's the that's the link right there. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ernie for our first polling question.
Oh, thank you very much, John, for that great content and your insights. I'm going to go ahead and launch our first polling question. For those of you in the audience after CP credit for today, you'll need to answer all the polling questions during the webinar. Of course, we appreciate everyone's consideration in answering our polling questions. Time permitting, on the polling questions, we may ask our speakers to comment on those as well. So again, we appreciate everyone's consideration in answering the polling question. I'll go ahead and leave that polling question up for another 30 seconds or so. As we close down the polling, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is going to be Karuna Mukherjee. Karuna is a Senior Director for Product Marketing at SAP. She is experienced in finance and performance management applications. She focuses on new technologies and innovations like mobility, in-memory, and cloud, and how they relate to the functions of finance. She is currently responsible for the SAP Enterprise Performance Management Mobile Applications and Next Generation EPM. I'm going to go ahead and close down our poll. And at this point, it is my distinct pleasure to hand the floor over to Karuna Mukherjee from SAP. Karuna, please take it away for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ernie, and thank you, John, for really setting the stage. As we talk about innovations and technology and really what that means for the Office of Finance. So very recently with Proformative, we had the pleasure of hosting a CFO event, which was extremely beneficial for us as we get to talk to the business and we hear from our customers. And in my mind, that is really where this whole discussion around, the always on, the connected CFO, right? So we spoke to several people in the industry in terms of what they view as CFO. And as we were preparing for this presentation, I came across some interesting statistics, right? So we found that 66% of executive management today really find that their decision window is shrinking, i.e. the time available to them to make decisions is shrinking. And it's an important factor for us to keep in mind as we develop new solutions, as we develop new mobile applications in the area of, specifically in the area of finance. The other thing that I found very interesting is, and John, I'm not sure whether you agree with me or not, but about 60% of the CEOs today spend a large portion of their time in meetings outside of their office, right? So this was research done by London School of Economics. Now, why is it important for us? It is important that we keep these kind of statistics in mind as we develop solutions, right? So again, identifying those very specific issues where finance executives, finance departments are focusing on, and really develop solutions that will work towards solving some of the issues that they have. The other interesting piece of information that we found was that, keeping in mind, whether it was time to make decisions or, how much time a CFO or CEO is spending in their office, it's really changing the way business is happening. It has become a defining moment for CFOs, as, John pointed out in the CFO Signal survey, in terms of how they are viewing their business, and more importantly, what are they enabling within their organization to drive the business. So again, just to recap a couple of things, right, in terms of what CFOs were struggling with, when they talk about incorrect information available, inaccurate information, outdated information, it is truly impacting their business, right? They are not able to assess what how their financial objectives are doing. They're not able to manage their risk. They're not able to look at their compliance issues. When you talk about the inability to look at your financial information across your different business dimensions, whether it is suppliers or customers or partners, you are losing the opportunity to identify where you can grow your business, right? You're losing that window to optimize your financial performance. And thirdly, in the area of time-consuming financial performance and analysis, which John pointed out as well, it really is hindering progress of organizations, and it's extremely important that we focus on solutions that will help you eliminate some of these issues. We have extended research that also shows that finance executives today are really embracing technology. They're looking at technology to collaborate within their larger ecosystems, whether it's within their organization or outside of their organization. And a couple of areas that they really want to focus on is how can they control costs across the organization. So it's not about blanket cost cutting, but really understanding, where can I optimize my costs. It's about identifying, supporting, and funding your growth objectives, as even the survey has pointed out. And third is just about increasing finance efficiency, right? So you really want to increase the productivity of your finance organization. You want to reduce the cost of your finance shared services. And oftentimes, when we talk to executives, we hear that even though they have identified technology as an enabler, it's a small percentage that actually believe that they have achieved this target, right? So even though they've embraced it, it's not really been, adopted well within the organization for various different reasons. So, what does all this mean in terms of, where we are going and what is it that we are hoping to achieve with technology, right? So, if you look at the past, finance had a very specific role. It had a role of financial governance. It had a role of producing reports, producing analysis, managing plans, distributing information. But that situation is changing today. And the finance organization has a lot more responsibility in terms of what they are to provide to their business, what they are to provide to their key stakeholders. So let's take a look at what are some of these new roles that are evolving within finance. These roles are not just centered around managing plans, distributing plans, but it is around predictive planning. Really giving the business, giving the key stakeholders information in terms of what impact will their decisions have today on the future performance of their company, planning towards that future performance. Looking at a more strategic cost analysis, so doing a full driver-based costing, activity-based costing, right? Really looking at what impact I can have and where can I strategically manage my costs to grow the business. The CFO has really moved into the role of a strategic advisor to the business in terms of identifying growth opportunities. They are responsible for defining the growth opportunities and really funding and supporting these growth initiatives, as well as driving innovation. The CFO today is the largest buying center of financial solutions of technology, and here is where whether it's SAP or Deloitte play an extremely important role in guiding our customers and providing the right solutions to our customers. So to reiterate some of the technology trends that John pointed out, it's basically mobility, analytics, and in-memory computing, or the SAP HANA technology. And I want to repeat a statement that John made, that that big data provides the answers and mobility drives further insight. It's extremely critical because we have adopted technologies like HANA and mobility across our analytics platform to really provide those solutions. When we looked at mobility, and I'll show you a couple slides down, we really identified where were the specific areas within the finance organization, so whether it was a finance executive or it was a financial analyst, where was the biggest pain point and what specific financial processes could we add value to by adopting the mobile technologies, right? So you will see things like travel and expense management. There's a lot happening in that space of making that easier. Again, keeping in mind that there is a metric that most organizations manage in terms of how soon are employees able to submit their expenses, get them approved. So getting that number lower is always considered good. So providing a solution to support that was extremely important. Providing an application that would allow a sales executive and account executive to have the latest information about a customer, their financial information about a customer as they go and visit their customers or talk to their customers was extremely important. It not only supported the growth initiative within the company, but it also gave them the ability to make certain on-the-spot decisions, whether it was in terms of payment terms to be offered or credit terms to be offered to that customer. So again, very specifically identifying the financial processes where we can enable mobility as a technology to improve that process. From an analytics perspective, a lot of time has been spent in determining what is the best reporting and analysis that we can make available to our finance users. And then the second piece, which is extremely important, which is coming up in the top 3 of any finance survey, CFO survey that we look at, is providing this integrated business planning platform, taking into account not just the planning piece of it, but also where big data comes into play, where HANA comes into play, and where mobility comes into play. And I will talk a little bit more in detail about that. And then, of course, the whole, the play around HANA and in-memory to the finance organization is huge, right? I mean, we are all in a situation where we need to cope with this, with the vast amounts of data that is being generated, both structured and unstructured, and how that will play into our decision-making process. So let's take a quick look at the life of a finance executive, right? I mean, we've taken a typical 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. day, though I do believe that they work longer than 4 o'clock in the evening. But it's interesting when you take a look at what is a finance executive doing during the course of the day, right? They typically start off their day by looking at the news, looking at announcements, seeing where the industry is going, any particular trends they need to be aware of. And the next, chunk of their time is really looking at the core finance issues. So looking at your budgets, looking at your plans, looking at your spend, looking to see if there are any particular financial risk factors that you need to be aware of. Are there any critical KRIs or key risk indicators that you are tracking that you need to manage to? So a large part of your day is looking at running your business, keeping the lights on. The later part of the day is when we found a lot of executives tend to focus on looking at opportunities, right? Seeing where they need to focus on for this quarter, for the next quarter, identifying those opportunities, looking at what issues are there, as they're getting ready to close their books end of the quarter. They start looking at analyzing the profitability of future opportunities, of current opportunities, and typically end their day with a more collaborative type of activities in terms of reaching out to other business groups, reaching out to other leaders. So when you take a look at this, I mean, there are very different areas where a CFO has to spend his or her time on, and we, from a solution technology provider, have really said, okay, within each of these areas, where can we provide solutions that is going to increase their productivity? So let's take a quick look at when you're talking about budgeting and spend. I mean, you could be in a meeting and you really want to look at, if I make certain changes, just to, price adjustments, or I make certain changes in terms of vendors or quantities that I'm going to sell, what impact is it going to have on my plan? You want the ability to make that kind of analysis, to make that kind of simulation happen in real time without saying, you know what, let's go back, let's, punch in some numbers and maybe we'll get back to you the next day. That is no longer a luxury that we have. So providing technology-based solutions, whether it is HANA or mobility to these specific processes, is really what's going to make the finance organization, what we like to term an always-on finance organization, and more importantly, make that CFO a connected CFO, so they know exactly what is happening when within their organization. So very specifically in the area of mobile, I mean, the last 3 years we have seen phenomenal growth, not only in the creation of solutions, mobile solutions for finance, but more importantly in the adoption of mobility within the finance organization. The key theme that we, from an SAP standpoint, have really always looked at is that, where can you see, quick and immediate results when you adopt mobility as a technology, right? Of course, we always have the anytime, anywhere theme when we talk about mobile, but it really comes down to providing the right set of information at the right time that is going to provide maximum impact and productivity to the finance organization. So the applications that you will see in the mobile space for finance really is about giving you that immediate access to relevant information. It's about accelerating your key processes, right? Key processes like planning and forecasting, as I mentioned, really based on real-time data. So that's where the marriage of HANA and mobility come in. Is that so one provides you the answers, and the other one really provides you the insight and the ability to consume that information. And the third area is around collaboration, becoming extremely important when we look at it from a larger performance management finance space, giving the ability for a set of users to really simulate scenarios and then collaborate within that subgroup to see what impact is going to have, on a particular decision is extremely important when we bring in solutions that that merge both big data as well as mobility. So there were 5 key themes that have been identified when we look at mobile as a technology for finance, which I'm sure all of you can relate to. And those 5 themes are really around security, right? I mean, you cannot sell a solution, you cannot talk to a customer in finance if you cannot assure them of the security of the application, both from a data perspective as well as an access perspective. And so it has been an extremely important theme for us that whenever we position solutions to finance, that is an important factor. The other one is seamless, and I want to spend a minute talking about that. When we talk seamless, there are 2 or 3 angles to it, right? So one is it is seamless in terms of the data that they are seeing. So it's extremely important that whether that particular financial report is being viewed on a laptop or a desktop or an iPad, it should be the same set of information that they are accessing, and more importantly, it should have the same look and feel. Our finance users should not have to go through the pain of learning different user interfaces. It should be seamless to them no matter where they are accessing that information from. We should give them the ability to personalize. If you recall, one of the points that came up in the CFO Signal surveys was that they're looking at analytics to provide them the role-based information. So here is really where the personalization capabilities of a mobile application comes in. I want to see what is important to my role today when I log into my financial dashboard on an iPad. I want to see those 2 or 3 important things that are relevant to my role, that are relevant to my job. We obviously want the information to be real time, and that's when we combine it with technologies like HANA. It gives us the ability to provide you real time information on planning and forecasting on your mobile device, as well as use and leverage some of the built-in collaborative capabilities that we have within a mobile device. So a good example of that is when you integrate that with an application like SAP Jam, you're able to not only do inherent things like annotations and emails and comments, but really right from within the device, reach out to somebody, email somebody that particular piece of information and start a discussion on that. So leverage some of the built-in capabilities that come with a mobile application in conjunction with collaboration. So when we look at this vision of the best run mobile CFO, at the end of the day, the CFO has like 3 key goals, right, as we talked about. It's about looking at your financial objectives and creating your shareholder value. You want to look at delivering superior service as well as manage your compliance and your regulations. And so we really have built out applications and solutions that have that are looking at each of those areas. When you look at financial objectives, we're looking at managing your strategy, executing your strategy, looking at your financial performance planning areas, as well as looking at the whole area around expenses and planning. When you look at your superior service at reduced cost, as John was pointing out as well, it's really managing your suppliers, right? Whether it's your expenses or your vendor payments, you're looking at how your customers are doing, looking at your customers' financial information. And the third one is really around compliance, right? So giving you a set of solutions that will look at your compliance and policy tracking. And when you start bringing in these applications into the Office of Finance is when you're really running a best run finance organization, because you have very specific solutions, you have specific best practices, specific processes to manage each of these key areas. So, in closing, from a mobility standpoint, again, right, a lot of these solutions have been put in place to really increase the productivity and the efficiency of the finance organization. Let's switch gears a little bit and, just want to spend a few seconds talking about data, right? I mean, we all understand that there is an explosion of data when you look at large businesses, right? It's an explosion, in terms of variety of data. So there's a lot of unstructured data that is getting generated, by our consumers, by the ecosystem. that have to be taken into account as we manage our business. The velocity is huge, right? So, I mean, they are predicting that the data will double every 18 months, right? And that is what we are saying today, and I'm sure this number is just going to increase over a period of time. And the third one is volume. I'm sure a lot of us a few years ago did not even know what an exabyte of data is, but in 2005, mankind created 150 exabytes of information, and in 2011, 1,200 exabytes of data, it was expected, was created, right? So keep in mind that these volumes and volumes of data, structured, unstructured, are made up of transactions, made up of social media data, made up of various reports that are coming out in the industry, and they all have to be looked at as we make our decisions. And here is where, in-memory really computing comes into play in terms of how we can leverage that data. So in-memory computing is primarily used for three key things. It is used to provide us insight, to really give you the ability to gain deep visibility into the set of data, both structured and unstructured. It is built or has the capacity to really allow you to access this financial data in real time. So as we talked about real time, whether it's you're looking at it on your laptop or real time when you're looking at it on your mobile device, and really give you the speed, right? Perform fast, flexible analytics, right? In the area of planning, in the area of reporting. And here is where, when you talk finance, are the three key themes around in-memory computing or SAP HANA. The goal again being, how can I empower my finance organization? Empower them yet with non-disruptive innovations, right? So oftentimes you will see a lot of these innovations are getting built into the larger product set, right? So if you are implemented ERP system, you're going to start seeing the business suite on HANA, essentially taking the core processes within the ERP set of solutions and then enhancing them with new technologies like SAP HANA. So 3 or 4 key themes when we're looking at HANA, right? It's about, gaining real-time insight. It's about giving you the ability to go deeper, dig deeper as you're looking to find answers, to act broadly. So, managing a large volume of data, and again, giving you the ability to merge data, not just finance data, but maybe merge it with a larger CRM set of data as you make your analysis, and give you the ability to run faster and get more flexible type of information. So eliminating the need to have only pre-canned, prefabricated reports, but really providing the business users, the finance users, to create their own analysis in real time and then make decisions based on that. Let's talk a little bit about planning. Planning is a key area for anybody in finance. It's came up as the top requirement even in the CFO Signal surveys. And when we looked at the planning process, there were three things that our customers always speak about, right? They want their planning process to be agile. They want the ability to plan better, to plan faster, and more importantly, react to that plan information faster. And the reason I want to stress that is when we talk about mobility and the use of mobility in the planning process, it's not just about providing you a planning report on the iPad, but it's more important about giving you the agility to enter information and then write it back to your planning server and then do the analysis in real time. We were talking to a few customers a couple of weeks ago, and the one thing that came out was that within, and this was a mid to large size company, that there were probably 10 or 12 people in the finance department that were responsible for the planning process. However, there were close to 500 people that were providing input into that planning process, which today was becoming a nightmare to manage. But when you take a planning application, put it on an iPad, give that access to 500 users who probably have like 2 or 3 numbers, key numbers that they need to feed in, you have now made the process more agile, giving the planners the ability to keep the information current and really spend more time doing analysis versus collecting information. We obviously want to boost the performance of the planning process, accelerate the planning and consolidation processing, and leverage that in-memory computing to do that. And the third one is around engaging everyone. As I said, it's, when you look at the next generation mobile interface, it really opens the doors up and gives us the ability, within the planning organization to reach a larger set of users. So some challenges which I'm sure, I don't want to go through every bullet, which I'm sure a lot of you hear about within your organizations is, we're getting delayed insight, we're not getting up-to-date information, there are too many performance bottlenecks as we go look at the planning process. And really by leveraging, in-memory computing, SAP HANA, we have made the process more dynamic and giving the ability to the finance users to now spend more time on analysis, right, rather than just supporting the business and providing input. You're able to shrink that planning cycle time and really do a right, plan on a right time basis, right? So make the process more iterative and really provide more detailed and cross-functional planning analysis to a larger user base. So 3 key themes that I would encourage you to leave with, right? Really, embrace that technology as you're looking to challenge your big data, right? Big data within the finance organization. Support a more real-time planning and analysis process and enable more detailed planning. So a little bit more information when we, specifically in the planning area, right? When we have adopted these technologies that are supporting, that are more real-time, more dynamic, it really comes down to giving the users the ability not only to enter more information, but also aggregate the information at a much faster time to reduce the decision cycle time and really enable a more granular planning and, more importantly, a scenario modeling process within the finance, right? So give the users the ability to try out different scenarios and see what is going to work within the organization as it supports their growth strategy. I want to highlight some research that was done by IDC a couple years ago, where they characterized companies as either fumblers or fact finders. And the key theme really was that data can be your friend, and if you have the right technology in place to view that data, to analyze the data, you can really become a fact finder, right? You can actually start looking at that data and using it to your advantage to grow, right? And so if you really want to go into the leader quadrant, there you're going to find more people within the organization who are fact finders, who have the tools and technology to analyze data and really leverage that going forward. So with that, before, while we have some time for question and answers, I just want to point you, we have a couple of thought leadership sites that we at SAP, manage. One is our blog, which is our SAP CFO Center. There's a lot of good information that we have there, with thought leaders like, from Deloitte and from other members of our ecosystem, people from the industry, where we talk a lot about the best practices for the Office of Finance. We also have a specific, on SAP.com, we have a specific sub-site in there for EPM, where you will get a lot more information specifically around the mobile applications or EPM, around planning, around consolidations, and of course there's a finance newsletter. But a lot happening in this space, a lot happening from a technology standpoint for the Office of Finance, and so it's always nice for us to come here and talk to you and see where some of your challenges are and where we can provide value, whether it's in terms of solutions or best practices. Ani, with that, over to you.
Thank you very much, Karuna, for that great content. I'm now going to go ahead and launch our second polling question, and at the same time I'll be kicking off the Q&A session as well. Again, for a reminder, those of you in the audience today, you'll have to answer all of the questions if you're after CPE credit. Again, we appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all the questions. And again, we encourage you to please ask questions on today's topics via the questions area in your GoToWebinar control panel. We have some renowned thought leaders here, and we want you to take full advantage of the time we have with them. The first question I'll throw out to John. John, what were the most surprising results that you saw from the most recent CFO Signal survey?
Thanks, Ernie. To me, the most surprising result, I think, is that we have that air of optimism. And linked to that, I guess, closely second, is that most, and this has continued over the last several quarters, is that most of our CFOs and most of their organizations are looking for increased revenue from existing markets. There's been a lot of talk about customer analytics over the last several years, but it's apparent now that that's extremely important for the CFO and CFO community out there. And so a lot of the techniques and tools that Karuna was talking about are going to become crucial for finance to master as they look to gain that specific insight.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. I've got kind of a follow-up question. Were there any notable results that you saw across either specific industries or company sizes on some of the key findings?
Well, what's interesting is that, and I would encourage everyone to go ahead and look at the website to get the specifics by industry. But what's surprising is how different the priorities are by industry when you dig down. And we cover a whole facet of industries, and so I would go out specifically to look at that. And it shows that really one size does not fit all for every industry. The other sort of the corollary to that, though, is that there are key commonalities across industries, and the one big one that I talked about on today's webinar was just the core finance priorities of getting very tactical and managing FP&A. So again, even the term FP&A has had some bit of a renaissance over the last 2 years that CFOs are looking more towards generating that the business insight out of a more organized financial planning and analysis group.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Karuna, I've got a next couple questions. I'll throw you away first. And again, I guess some of the people are with me as well. Karuna, can you give us your definition of big data?
That's a very interesting question, but big data has, I think there are several aspects to it, right? From a technology standpoint, we really are viewing big data as a collection of structured and unstructured data that come into play, well, that affect an organization. And from a technology standpoint, it's a collection of analytics, it's a collection of HANA and the solutions that we put into play to really solve this issue of big data.
Okay, Karuna, can I kind of follow up a question on that? So you mentioned, some people that don't have as much experience in the data world. Can you give us a very brief definition of what you mean by unstructured data, and then how companies might be structuring that to actually leverage those types of that type of information?
Sure. So let's take a very simple example. We have a retail company that launches a new product that it sells through its retail stores. There is a set of financial and CRM type of sales type of data that gets generated in terms of who's buying the product, which store is making the maximum sales, what particular, if there are multiple versions of the product, let's take it's a coat, what colors are selling, what sizes are selling. Now all this type of information is structured data that is getting captured within your transactional systems. Now come into play your different social media channels, right? Now there is all the chatter on your social media channels in terms of reviews of the products or complaints about it, or complaints about the product, complaints about the customer service, which you are typically not capturing in your core transaction system, but however become extremely relevant to understand what the sentiment is, what the reviews are of the product. And so that is really unstructured data. Now again, if this is a very simplistic example, unstructured data can get a lot more complicated depending on the type of industry you're in, or depending of the type of geography you're in. But so when you are doing decision making, it becomes extremely important to not just look at your structured data, right? So in the old world, we would just look at our transaction system and do analysis based on that this particular geography or this particular region and this particular product is doing well. But in today's world, we want to take that and marry this with this unstructured data that has come to us through social media, and then make a true analysis going forward. And and that is when you start looking at in-memory computing, is giving you that ability to marry both your structured as well as your unstructured data.
Okay, thank you very much. John, this question is for you. In the survey, CFOs, they list government spending and budget policy as a top impediment to growth, and I've actually seen this in other CFO surveys. What do you think is really behind this concern? Is it healthcare or policy uncertainty? What do you think is really driving that as being that top concern?
Actually, Ernie, both of them have been top concerns of the CFOs when you drill down into a larger degree of detail. And a lot of it has to do with the uncertainty of the particular impacts, and I think we're starting to see that now as the healthcare law is poised to become effective in the next several weeks. And what's interesting to see is that, as I spoke about earlier during the webinar, is that that sentiment from the CFO community has been amplified over the last couple of years as opposed to abated. So it becomes a larger and larger concern. And I think we're going to have to work through the next couple quarters as the impacts of the healthcare law become, more clear across the broader economy before that will start to subside at all.
Okay, thanks, John. Karuna, I'll direct this question your way. What is being done as far as securing private data that's being accessed by personal mobile phones versus business mobile phones, and what are some of the certifications that people should be looking for in terms of various providers they might look at?
Sure. So I think this, in my mind, there's another layer to that question, right? So certain companies have, depending on what their mobile policy is, right? So you can have companies that are, issuing only their own mobile devices, or you can have companies that have basically a combination of company-issued mobile devices or bring your own device. Now, in either case, depending on where the devices are coming from, and I can talk more for SAP. So at SAP, we have our, our whole mobile security platform that we get with Sybase and Afaria that really is that security layer that we provide for access into our data and access into our applications. So a very simple example would be if you are looking to access any sort of financial information, financial data from our ERP system on a mobile device, it's that we have to go through that particular security layer to really access that information. So Afaria has been configured for us, depending on the user, depending on your role in the organization, on what you can access on a mobile device. Now, things like entering your expenses and travel obviously has been deployed more broadly within the organization, again, leveraging the same sort of security platform. Let's take another example. When you look at the planning application that we recently released on through EPM Unwired on a mobile platform, we have that security layer built in terms of, who can access data, who can actually enter data through a mobile device. So there are various security layers that are available today in the industry that gives you the required security to deploy a mobile application within your organization.
Okay, great. Let me kind of follow up on that. So are there specific certifications in this area yet, such as like SOC Type 1 and Type 2? Are those applicable, or are there other specific types of certifications that people should look for?
To be honest, I don't know the specific certifications. As I said, I am more aware of the technologies that need to be put in place. Now, there are networking certifications, that as an example that Cisco has, like CCMI and things like that, that the network administrators within the company will need to take to manage this mobile security platform.
Okay, great. John, this question I'll direct your way. What are some of the specific actions that you see CFOs might be taking to act in that role of catalyst across their companies?
So what I've seen work very effectively for CFOs is developing an engagement plan to basically go engage with the business unit leaders in their particular companies. I was working with a CFO probably 8 to 10 months ago, and we were talking about how to do that specifically. And there's nothing can beat going out and actually working with the individual business units to understand their specific concerns and what have been the most recent developments in the business, and how finance can help push through that additional analysis and business insight that the business units were looking for. So basically, I helped him work through a plan where he developed that action plan and then basically socialized it and with the CEO and the rest of the executive leadership, because it took an investment of his time and then his direct reports' time to go out and meet with the individual business units. But when they came back, they had a much better idea what was going on in the business, and then they developed an action plan to meet some of the specific requirements.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. For the sake of time, we're going to take one more question. I'm going to go ahead and launch our final polling question as we take that last question. The last question is going to be for you, Karuna. How are companies determining which data is important? And I would almost say, how are they creating the right data diet with so much information out there?
So I think it comes down to, in my mind, 2 or 3 key things, right? They are trying to identify where they want to grow, what their growth opportunities are. And I think based on that, they are deciding what pieces of data need to be pulled forward, right? So if you take a simple case of managing your cost, the industry, and I think this applies across the board, they have transformed from doing more of a across-the-board cost cutting to now reaching a point where they have identified the areas within the organization they need to grow and then start collecting information, right? So if the area they want to grow is, let's say, consumer sales, right, start analyzing a lot of that customer information and really, kind of bringing that together with your financial information. So I think, a large part of what data you use really comes down to, where you want to grow as an organization, where you want to grow as a business.
Oh, thank you very much, Karuna. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close the Q&A portion of the webinar, and we will coordinate with our speakers to get any questions that we didn't get answered and hopefully get those posted on proformative.com. As a reminder, you'll be prompted to take a short survey once the webinar concludes. We greatly appreciate your feedback regarding the event. We invite you to please join us at www.proformative.com to ask any questions or continue the conversation with your peers and experts you heard from today. A big thank you to John and Karuna for their time and insights. They're clearly thought leaders in their field, an excellent source on today's topics. Note in the post-webinar survey, you'll have the opportunity to express your interest in being connected with either or both speakers or our sponsor with just one or a few mouse clicks. Thanks again to our sponsor, SAP. And finally, thank you to the audience for your valuable time. We hope to see you again at another Proformative event or online at www.proformative.com. Make the rest of your day great, everyone. Take care, and thank you.